Assalamu alaikum. My name is Rina Saeed Khan, and I'm sorry, my presentation is very academic. I don't have cute pictures of beautiful babies and useful tips, but this is what I do. I write about this. I've done my master's in environment and development. So climate change is happening. It's real. The important thing is here, the 2-degree rise in global temperature. This is what the world has agreed to, scientists, world leaders. There was a huge conference in Paris 2 years ago, and this is what we decided, that we have to limit global warming to 2 degrees if we want to save our civilization. So this is Al Gore type of a presentation that I won't go into too much, but what you have to see, the correlation between temperature rise and carbon dioxide emissions, and this is important, that, okay, if you want to limit to 2 degrees, the world has already warmed about 1 degree, so we don't have, the window is closing. Debate is now over. I'm sorry for Donald Trump. I didn't vote for him. But yes, the scientists, the global community of scientists, which is the IPCC, is called the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. This is a UN body. And they came out with the last report in 2014. And yeah, the debate is now really over. So the impacts of climate change across the world, more frequent storms, cycles of flooding and droughts, melting of the polar caps, glaciers, inundation, all this is happening all over the world. So no country is going to be safe. Reduced agricultural output, extinction of many species, increased water scarcity, which we're facing in Pakistan, health risks like dengue. Dengue didn't exist in Pakistan a few years ago, and now, so basically a world very different from the one that we know today. So then if you know all this, as scientists are saying it, why isn't there been more work done? And, politicians only think about 5 years, 4 years. They don't think long term. Obama was an exception. The scientists are very clear. They've been clear for a long time now. There's just been, it's difficult to get the world to agree, and that's how the UN system works. It has to be a consensus. Pakistan, I'll just come a little bit to Pakistan since we live here. We are very low, so we didn't contribute to global warming, but we are very high in suffering because we are now probably in the top 10 list of countries that are the most vulnerable to climate-related disasters. The Paris Agreement, this is at the Paris UN Climate Change Conference in 2015. The world came together, we agreed 2 degrees pursuant to 1.5. Why did we agree to that? Because the small island states were saying that with 2 degrees of warming, we will be flooded. So this was something that was included to, let's pursue 1.5. Nationally determined contributions, this was a voluntary homework, and it's very complicated, these negotiations, but every country had to submit what will it do voluntarily. And this is what we submitted because of CPEC. You can see all the coal power plants that are coming up. We are going to see a fourfold increase in emissions, which is not good for our air pollution. Already the impacts. You're going to see the impacts on food security. You can talk to farmers. I'm sure they're suffering. You're already beginning to see more and more cyclones in the Arabian Sea, and lots more disasters like floods and droughts. So in Pakistan, we either have too much water or too little water. Either we have droughts like we're experiencing in the Thar Desert, or flooding. Okay, so communication gaps. So why, if we know all this is happening to the country and people are suffering, why is there still, why isn't this headline news, right? So there was a BBC Media Action Team that came to Pakistan 2012, and they did a little survey, and they found out that it was a language that is being used that people are still not understanding at the grassroots level. Like in Bangladesh, even a little child knows what climate change is. They know what to do because the Bangladesh government has invested in schools and children and all across society. We have our war on terror. We have, our transition to democracy. We have corruption. We have Panama leaks. Unfortunately, climate change is just not on the top of our list, even for the government or for the media. Even I have to fight to get my articles printed in a place that, is reasonably in the front of the paper, usually in the back. So when does it become breaking news? I think when the 2010 floods happened, there were super floods, and I think that really changed the thinking in Pakistan. The media started picking up. People began to realize, wait a minute, climate change kills more people than terrorism, and that is a fact. And I think now more and more newspapers, Urdu papers, English papers are beginning to write about this issue, which is great, because I don't feel like I'm a lone voice in the wilderness anymore. So going back to 2 degrees, this is the last bit that's most important. We have to cut emissions drastically by 2050. That's not very far from now. The world has decided that we have to do this, but how we do it, the framework, that is still being debated. And so there are 2 approaches. There's mitigation, and which is, you use fossil fuels more efficiently. You switch to renewables like solar, wind, wherever possible. You improve the insulation of buildings. You protect and expand forests, which some, like KPK, doing a great job, Billion Tree Tsunami. And then the other approach is adaptation. So mitigation you do for the long term, and adaptation you do right now because you're already suffering, right? You're being hit by floods and droughts. And then, of course, somebody mentioned rainwater harvesting, planting trees in catchment areas, better agriculture practices, sustainable agriculture, disaster preparedness, strengthening institutions. We're one of the few countries in the world that actually has a dedicated climate change ministry. We have a dedicated climate change minister. But then if you ask them what has actually been done on the ground, I'm sorry to say, but there's still, we have a new law, Climate Change Act. So there's a lot of policies, lots of talks, lots of government ministries, and but when it comes to actual action on the ground, unfortunately, there's not that many projects. And but I hope now with all these new sort of laws and policies that people will, if you put pressure on the government, they will be forced to act. Thank you.